I know I've walked into performance reviews where I've looked back on the year and I'm like, I know I worked hard. I know I've accomplished so much, but I don't have the actual tool. So I go in and it feels more of an emotional conversation because I feel burnt out.
All of the celebrations help with boosting your confidence because when we celebrate what we've achieved and you can reflect and know that it's there and be confident in it, it's going to encourage you to tackle bigger projects, take on more leadership roles, to stretch yourself a little bit more. Welcome back to the Career Advancement Academy. I'm Jack. This is Kara. We're hopefully your favorite career coaches, and we're back for another Career Advancement Academy episode. This is number 34. The importance of celebrating your career achievements to go further. Big topic today, Kara.
I'm excited. We've been talking all January about how to advance your career, both tactically, strategically. We talked about optimizing your resume. Last week, we talked about LinkedIn strategies. And if you have not checked that out, I got to tell you, you have to go check out last week's episode because we almost gave away the farm. We told you all of our best practices for optimizing your LinkedIn profile to be seen by headhunters, recruiters, decision makers, hiring managers, and to be seen as an industry expert or leader. And you got to check it out. And I'm really excited about this week's episode. One, because my birthday's at the end of the week, which is exciting.
Celebrate.
And because how fun is it, right? How fun is it to celebrate, right? I believe that high achievers, they don't celebrate themselves enough. And it's just a really exciting thing to get in the habit of celebrating not only yourself, but others as well. And you've heard us talk about it in multiple different episodes if you've been following the Career Advancement Academy podcast, but we've talked about the Kudos Folder.
Mm.
In fact, it's been from one of our most popular episodes, the very first episode. It's one of our top 5 tips for advancing your career is having a kudos folder. And if you start in the year 2024 and you don't have a kudos folder, let's make that a goal for this year because, hey, it's a way to celebrate yourself. It's a way to really look at your achievements and your accomplishments. And what a great goal to have more fun and celebration in your life, right?
I think for myself, really, this is something that I always struggled with because I never really kind of understood what was going in to the kudos folder,
Yeah.
right? I just thought, hey, every good thing, it needs to go in. And then I've got all of my emails, everything in this massive place. So, Kara, can you give me a little bit more guidance on what exactly is the purpose of this and what goes in it?
Yeah, so a kudos folder is really a personal collection of your accomplishments, positive feedback, and significant career moments, right? It's important to keep a positive view of yourself and not to overlook your own successes. This is so important for a lot of different reasons, right? And we're going to get into how you can use this kudos folder and why it's such an important tool in your toolbox. But when you acknowledge your achievements, your confidence is going to really soar. It's going to increase, and you get to really recognize what you've done. This can be your best career advocate tool, like I said, in your toolbox, so that you can be your best career advocate. And it does a lot of different things for you, both strategically, tactically, and for your mindset. So I'm really, really excited about it. And in fact, a recent Gallup study found that employees, right, who receive excellent recognition are actually 20 times more likely to be highly engaged compared to those who receive inadequate or poor recognition. So it kind of starts sometimes with you. If you're not recognizing all that you've accomplished, then and you're not getting that recognition from other people, it's a real big hit to the ego. It's a hit to your mindset, and you're not going to feel as accomplished or feel like you want to go further in your career. So a real big thing that I always advocate is to keep track of your kudos. So let's talk about how to set up and maintain this kudos folder because you might be thinking, how do I even get started? So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I guess we should talk about like what the practical steps are. Like, how do we start storing it, right? So I
Yeah.
guess we have to kind of choose a platform such as like Google Docs or maybe our personal email, and we need to make sure that it's stored in a place that we have access to it. separate from our work related systems, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Okay.
because if you're at a job, right, and your boss sends you an email that says, "Hey, great job, right? Great job on that last project. You did it ahead of schedule, under budget, and the client's really happy." Like, holy crap, that's such a great kudos that you just got from a boss or a mentor. It's easy to just say, "Oh, I'm going to flag that email." Fantastic. Well, if for some reason there's a flag or star, whatever, right? If you have a layoff or you decide to get another job, you're not going to remember all the specifics of that if it's stuck on a work server. So, like Jack said, choose a platform that's separate of your current job's platform, right? So I always recommend having a personal email that you can either forward those things to, copy and paste, send yourself an email, have a Google Doc or Dropbox.
Dropbox. Yeah.
Having a Dropbox one is a really good one because that's separate from any emails that you might lose access to, whatever, right? So having something like that, old school was printing it out, but hey, that gets lost sometimes too. So really, really recommend having a place that's going to follow you throughout all of your career steps. What I always recommend as well, if you just want to be super, super simple, is just start jotting things down. That could be in a running doc, right? Google Doc, a notebook, whatever it is. How do we maintain uh, this?
I think really kind of starting with regular updates, basically also making sure that we're having those emails from the praise from work, the notes from project collaborations, comments from colleagues, any way that we can capture our story so that we can tell that story later is going to be key here. And really kind of almost looking at our job duties and transforming them to the fulfilling job responsibilities and career achievements that we're looking to do.
Mhm.
Regular updates need to be made to this every so often, maybe quarterly.
Yeah. So what I always recommend is, hey, a great idea is to, like Jack said, quarterly or monthly, go in there, review what you've done for that month or for that quarter, see if you can update it. Plus, you can review some of the other stuff that you've done recently or that you may have been working on. But what I think is really, really important is have this as an open tab or easily accessible and update it in real time, right? As soon as you get that email that comes in from your boss or a mentor or a colleague, or as soon as that project is completed and the client says, "Great, thank you so much," go into that kudos folder, take 2 minutes, update it, copy and paste something, jot down a note, because it's not going to take you too much time to put something in there. And you're building the habit of, hey, something got done. I'm going to go update it and I'm going to give myself a 1 minute celebration. Good job, pat on the back. And it's not going to take too much time out of your day to day. Whereas reviewing it every month or quarter at the end of the year, that could feel like a project in and of itself. So, what are the types of things that we want to include? Like Jack said, emails praising your work, notes from projects or collaborations, compliments from colleagues, any form of positive recognition or feedback, right? The other things that I would also recommend is if you didn't get feedback from someone, you didn't get a feedback, maybe you have a boss that's kind of stingy with their feedback.
Mhm.
They don't praise you very often. Again, I'm going to go back to you're the only person that's going to advocate for you throughout your career. So when you feel like you've done a good job and you feel like, hey, I deserve a little bit of praise for this and I'm not getting it anywhere, give it to yourself. Go put it in your kudos folder. Make sure it's not forgotten. Every time you complete a project, every time you get something done, and you're like, hey, this was important to me and I'm really, really proud of it, put it in that kudos folder.
I guess that makes sense because we are the author of our own stories, right? If we're not documenting the small and major milestones, who else is keeping track?
Exactly, exactly. So if you notice, I said, and celebrate them when you put that in. So why is it so important that we celebrate our accomplishments?
I think it definitely has something to do with like the mental feedback loop because how often do we do something and it's just on to the next and on to the next and on to the next and it's just a never-ending train and we're constantly climbing this hill, so to speak, and we never get to the top. And eventually if we never get to the top or we don't appreciate the journey, well, at some point frustration's going to set in.
Yeah, absolutely. If you listen to our episode on imposter syndrome, you might have heard my theory about high achievers and imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome affects anywhere between 80 to 85% of people. out there. And so if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, you're not alone, right? And there's a couple of things to do to overcome imposter syndrome, like talking about it, setting achievable goals, etc. But what I have noticed after working with thousands of high achievers in a job search about their career, etc., is that I realize with high achievers and being one myself, is that we tend to set these goals that feel almost impossible. We want to achieve and we want to achieve big, right? And so we set these goals, they feel impossible. We're looking towards something that's way out in the future for so long, right? And then by the time that we finally do achieve it, it has stayed in our brains as something almost unachievable or needs to take hard work for a very long time, that by the time we do achieve it, it feels almost impossible to envision ourselves at the finish line because we've been envisioning ourselves before the finish line for so long, right? And so what is that missing? What's the next step? Usually for high achievers, it's like, okay, I feel like an imposter. I feel like a fraud being here because I've been telling everyone that I'm going to get here, but I'm not here yet. And now that I am here, it's hard to reconcile that I am here. So what do? I'm going to set another goal and I'm going to get back into this race of trying to go after something because I don't feel worthy of actually achieving it. So what is that missing step? Well, it's actually celebrating, right? It's celebrating and cementing into our brains, you did it. You did it. Let's take a moment to actually realize we are here. We are past that finish line. Let's celebrate and get that recognition that we need. And sometimes you might not get that from other people. You might not get that from your family, your friends, your colleagues, your boss. And so you celebrating your achievement, writing it down somewhere in a place like a kudos folder where it can be cemented in reality is a fantastic way for you to start overcoming that imposter syndrome and getting a more accurate depiction of your self-awareness and what you're capable of.
I think really from my own perspective, that's just something I never even think about where you're in it.
Not a lot of people do.
Life is just flying and
Yeah.
it's the next task. So it's really important to have that reminder because it allows us to almost reset
Yeah.
and then set ourselves up for the process to go to another goal. But we've completed that feedback loop in our brains. And so our bodies can feel a little bit more connected to that moment of accomplishment. And there's nothing better than actually appreciating the summit when
Yeah.
you reach somewhere.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you mentioned a couple of different things, and I did too, like reaching the summit and the finish line, right? We view these things like watching sports and like football and like all of this stuff. And when you finish and you complete a game or you complete a race, what always happens? People are celebrating,
I
right?
mean, there's no championship ever that doesn't go without a parade
Right.
at some point or a
And
trip to
there's
the White
some
House
sort
or
of celebration,
something
right?
happening.
And so a lot of times what we forget as high achievers is we're like, oh, well, that's only for them. It's for sports. It's for that. But what we're not doing when we're not celebrating, and you even said it yourself, I I'm just on to the next task. I have too much work to do. I got to keep going. I don't have the time. I don't have the time, right, to celebrate. But what's happening when you're not celebrating, when you're not recognizing your achievements, when you're not finishing the loop, is you're not finishing the loop. And so you're just opening more loops and you're not completing that for your psyche and for your mindset to say, hey, job well done. We crossed that finish line. Let's celebrate so that we can go and do it again.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No.
I see kind of a pattern that happens because of this, because if we continue to do this so long, yeah, you could be very successful and hit a lot of milestones in maybe one avenue of life. But because we haven't closed that mental tab, guess what happens? You're still focusing just in that area of life,
Mhm.
and everything outside of that purview is not as important. Well, guess what? You're going to have other areas of life potentially suffering
Mhm.
where you're not going to feel as much enjoyment. And potentially that could even bleed over to those other areas of life where some people go through life on it just because, hey, I think I've reached this chapter. Should I get married? Hey, you're a viable potential partner. of the right age, well, let's get married, let's have kids. And then people wake up 20, 30 years later and they're like, well, what choices did I make? Why did I make those choices? And they're struggling to really, struggling really to see themselves in their lives. And it's because of this unintentionality. And that's why celebration is so key to reset that cycle.
Yeah. It also leads to, and what I thought, where I thought you were going is burnout, right? Is
Mm.
because now you are not completing cycles, and loops and tabs, right? You're just opening new ones and you continue grinding and you continue pushing yourself towards more stuff. And what that happens to your brain is it doesn't tell your brain, hey, we've completed, hey, we finished. And also, good job, right? You're just continuing to say, hey, do more, do more, do more. You haven't finished, so you potentially are a failure, even though we kind of know that we've finished or we've done it, but we haven't cemented it in. And so we physically in the real world are here, but our brains feel like we're here. And so there's a huge disconnect. And like Jack said, then we start going into, I got to do this because I feel like I should, even though I don't know exactly where I actually am. And so it's really big. And so with all that being said, not only is it important to celebrate, but now you have a whole, when you're going back to the kudos folder, you now have a whole data set on yourself and in your career that can be used in so many different ways. Not only is this going to increase your self awareness to help with that imposter syndrome and to really understand where you truly are in your career, your life, your achievements, all that other stuff, but you get to have that, for lack of a better word, ammunition, right? To advocate for yourself in your career in a lot of different ways. So let's talk about some ways that we can do that.
All right. So one way is, let's say we have a performance review. They come up every year, right? And we could potentially use those accomplishments as a tool and or that kudos folder as a tool to bring up those accomplishments to advocate for ourselves to get a little bit more compensation instead of this that 2% standard raise.
Yeah. I know I've walked into performance reviews where I've looked back on the year and I'm like, I know I worked hard. I know I've accomplished so much, but I don't have the actual tool. So I go in and it feels more of an emotional conversation because I feel burnt out, right? I feel so burnt out. I feel overworked. I know I'm always volunteering for stuff. And then when I go and I ask for that raise, they're like, I'm sorry, I can't give that to you because I don't have any proof for that. And that is a devastating moment because you know in your bones and your soul you deserve that, but you don't have anything to back it up. And so I never want you to be in that position. I want you to go in, and we have episodes on performance reviews. Please check them out if you have one coming up. Uh, to be logical, to be an advocate for yourself, and to have that proof to go ask for what you're worth. Another really great way to use these is honestly for resume writing,
Okay. Yeah,
right?
makes
I
sense.
mean, your resume is a physical representation of what you can do for the next company that you're going to go work for by virtue of showcasing literally in a condensed version your kudos folder, right? So those quantifiable achievements and powerful stories that you have put in those kudos folders, that's where you put it out for external use is on your resume.
I can't tell you how many professionals I talked with that when you talk about the idea of achievements, they just get turned into deer in headlights. And
Yeah.
it's because this was never done. So if you start today, imagine where you're going to be in 5 to 7 years.
Mhm. Now, as you all know, we write resumes. That's what our company offers, etc. It is rare for someone to come with a list of their achievements for us to rewrite and put into their resume. Most of the time, and I'm talking to you if you're listening to this, because the majority of people do this, is they take their old job descriptions and they regurgitate it onto their resume, cross their fingers, and hope for the best. Unfortunately, here's what hiring managers are looking for. They're looking for, what can you do for me?
Hmm.
What can you do for the team and for the company? And they can tell what you can do for them and for the team and for the company by virtue of what you've done for your past companies and your past teams and your past leaders. And they can't get that out of responsibilities from your past job descriptions, especially because most likely those job descriptions, once you got into the company, probably were worthless and does not even really describe about what you really did in that role, right? So that's why having a kudos folder is really going to help you out.
Love it. Love it. But
Couple, mhm,
I think we can also use it for interviews, right?
absolutely.
Because that's when they're pressing us. They're like, "Hey, tell me
Tell
when
me
you
what you
did this."
did.
And I mean, if you have that situation, task, action, result, that star method, right, on your kudos folder from already keeping track of all of that, now your interviews become easier. And let's hack life. Let's make it easier on ourselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that you do today, what I believe in, needs to be able to help out a future version of you, right? And so, future you in an interview is going to be like, thank God I have this kudos folder and I can tell this story. These stories, they need to demonstrate how you've handled situations in your past role. The achievements from your kudos folder, they can answer a lot of common interview questions, like what's your greatest achievement, describe a challenge, how you overcame it, all that good stuff. And not only that, but your kudos folder, reviewing it before an interview, talk about the confidence boost walking into that interview. Hey, oh, I just looked at this whole folder, this whole document of all the amazing things I've done in my career. They got to give me this job. And I have to say, confidence is half the battle in these interviews.
Yeah, I can tell you, we've used the word authenticity a lot, but it's hard to be authentic if you don't have confidence. Because if you don't have confidence, what you're saying is not going to come out as true. It's
Yeah.
not going to come out as true to the others you're talking to.
Couple of other ways that you can use your kudos folder is obviously in your elevator pitch. We've done a whole episode on your elevator pitch. Definitely check it out. In our elevator pitch framework, we always recommend throwing an achievement or two in there, especially if it relates to the job that you are interviewing for. We've also been talking about personal branding this month in January, incorporating achievements in your professional branding. You want to be recognized as an expert in your industry? Well, no better way than talking about how you've killed it in that specific area, right? Another way is going to be on LinkedIn. And tomorrow I am dropping a YouTube video talking about how you can use your kudos folder, how celebration and celebrating others is going to enhance your personal branding and your professional branding. And so I highly recommend watching that video if this resonates with you to take your kudos folder and take celebration to the next level. So stay tuned, subscribe to the Optimized Career Solutions YouTube channel so that you are notified when that drops tomorrow. But on your LinkedIn profile, really making sure that your achievements and your accomplishments in the description section of the professional experience sections are there, right? Also, creating content that advocates and shows your success stories in a really authentic way is going to be great. Again, I go over some actual specific examples tomorrow in our YouTube channel. So make sure to check that out.
I think it's really just important to reflect on how celebrating helps our mindset.
Absolutely.
Because if you're watching this for some reason in your career, you want to grow, you want to get better, you want to improve, you want more compensation, you want to live a different life, and maybe you just want alignment, but all of the celebrations help with boosting your confidence because when we celebrate what we've achieved and you can reflect and know that it's there and be confident in it, it's going to encourage you to tackle bigger projects, take on more leadership roles, to stretch yourself a little bit more. And that when you do that, you're going to be able to take on more tasks and be able to be seen by your leaders and the people who are your direct managers as being able to take on more. And that's just going to continue to further. And we also need to improve how others see us. We want to be able to recognize our own achievements and we want people to see us as capable, successful. So we need to keep our resume, our professional profiles updated with these wins so that the gatekeepers can help us move through this process.
Yeah,
What are some other
absolutely.
ways that the mindset gets helped?
The kudos folder and celebrating your wins, it helps our mindset because it keeps you motivated,
Mm.
right? Motivation is always a tricky thing. Like sometimes if I know Jack and I after the holidays and it took a couple days off, it's hard to get motivated to go again, right? I like to think about motivation as that it breeds more motivation. Once you start going, you're continue to go. And so every time you celebrate a win, it motivates you to set and reach new goals, right? And this positive cycle keeps you moving forward and advancing in your career, which is why you're here listening to this episode, right? And the other thing is that it, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, is that it helps to fight off those negative thoughts, right? If you are staring at a job description, an interview request, a promotion potentially, and you are staring at a blank page saying, oh, what do I have to offer? What value do I have? You're going to start feeling really bad about yourself. You're going to start thinking negatively about yourself. You aren't going to be able to advocate for yourself.
Mm.
And so having this kudos folder, it's going to help you fight off those negative thoughts that our brains, they just do, right? They brains just brain, and it's going to be inevitable to do. So this is a powerful tool to help protect us against ourselves sometimes. And it's also going to help us prevent burnout, right? By completing these loops and having that really great sense of finalization and completion in order to go take on new things. So it's really time for us to enjoy our successes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know that there's sometimes that guilt and shame about enjoying and celebrating the
Mm.
successes that we have, especially as women or just in general. We don't want to come across as braggadocious or narcissistic or braggy or whatever. But here's the thing, you've worked hard for your achievements. You put in the blood, sweat, and tears. You've had to overcome obstacles. You've had to overcome fear. You had to learn new skills. And those achievements in your kudos folder, they are hard won and you deserve to celebrate. I'm not telling you to go out and shove your accomplishments in other people's faces. Absolutely not. That's not professional. But it is okay in a professional way to celebrate and be proud of your successes and to use them in order to advance in your career in a professional way in terms of your resume, your interviews, your performance reviews, etc. And it's a good way, again, to remember your worth, especially when things get tough.
I think it's really important as we wrap up today is to remember just every big achievement, big, small, really has contributed to who you are today. So really take into account opening your own kudos folder. We strongly recommend that, but also don't forget to celebrate the small wins, taking track of what you do on the daily that maybe was a win from the day, so that you can actually feel appreciative of yourself as you're working on something where that might have a longer timeline to actually accomplish that goal. But we're also, like Kara mentioned, we're dropping a YouTube video tomorrow for a deeper dive into what celebrating your kudos folder really can be and some strategies around that. Make sure that you check that out with us on our Optimized Career Solutions YouTube channel if you want some more details with that with Kara. Also, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting platform so that more people can see us. Take this episode, share it with a friend that has struggles in their career, wants to get to that next level, and make sure that you're continuing to support the Career Advancement Academy.
Absolutely. And if you're struggling in your career, thinking about making a change, wanting to get into a job search, or need help writing your resume, check out our products and services at www.optimizedcareers.com. We love being able to provide free resources like the Career Advancement Academy podcast and the Optimized Career Solutions YouTube channel. However, we love being able to work with you one-on-one, and we offer free consultations to anyone who would like. You can get one at optimizedcareers.com and you'll be able to talk to either myself or Jack. And we would love to see if we're a fit to work with you. Have a great rest of your week. We wish you all the best and we'll see you next week.
Keep celebrating.